Hey, it says that I am live, so hopefully that is the truth. Well, last week, uh, I don't know if I have shit on my face. You'd think I'd plan these things, but I don't. And it just so happened that I was doing equally crappy streaming on Twitch in the sense that I was not having good games of Apex. So I decided to stop streaming there, stop playing video games, and hop over here onto the old YouTubes since it was a lot of fun last week. People asked me some questions about swords. I got to ramble into the camera about swords, and I felt better about myself for being semi-competent at a subject rather than being terrible at video games. So here it is again. I have no particular plan for the old stream. I'm just going to ramble about swords. I can certainly find something to talk into the void about, but I had a lot of fun responding to chat questions last time. So if anyone happens to have stuff, questions, things, and the like, throw it in the old commentary, and I will endeavor to respond to it, and we'll see where the conversation goes from there. I think I was asked recently on the forums. There's been a couple questions that have come about that while people might be typing things, I see there's a few people in here, so hopefully questions come. But I did get a question that I think I've answered in comments a few times. But it was, what do I do with all of the broken chunks? And it kind of got me thinking about all the places that those things have ended up. So the first and most common use that I have for the broken bits that happen from sword reviews is I use them in other sword reviews to break other swords. And eventually they break to the point where they're just kind of nubbins, or they're so degraded and chewed up that they're not. I mean, I guess you could maybe make some of them into like a little dagger or something like that, but they're not particularly useful. So that's usually what I use them for. I also have tried to make them into other things, but I have varying degrees of success at doing that. I've given them away. I've sold them. I don't do that so much anymore, but in the very early days when I had a bunch of broken stuff, I didn't think it was worth anything. And I've sold it to other SBG members, and I think I put some on eBay or something like that. It wasn't really worth a huge amount. And occasionally I've given them away to people that make very compelling arguments for projects. But what I didn't outline in the response that I noted was that I don't usually give them away to people that ask for them, because I don't want to encourage it. So I think people ask me for swords at least once a day. I probably get an IM asking for a sword, and I don't do the giveaways. So yeah, unless you have a really cool idea for what to do with the broken one, and you are also a creator that would be able to share it out there in some way, I would not count on getting broken bits. But I suppose you don't know until you ask. There's some folks. Riled, is it riled or ruled? I don't. How do you? Hopefully, I'm saying it right. Riled, wild. I like how I read it. It's in the first thing that you say is the answer to my question. That's awesome. Yep. Herp derp. Yeah, the swords in broken bits, I've thought, but basically taking the broken bits and sending them to somebody to make a sword. Mike Curley might have done that because he's gotten a fair number of the broken bits when he was more of an aspiring smith rather than an accomplished one. I know I think I sold him some a long time ago, and I also what did I do? I also gave him some when I sent broken bits to him when he was looking for prep work on Forged in Fire and the like. So yeah, I did send him some. He does have some broken stuff from me already, and I think he was planning on making it when he got a press. I don't know whatever turned out from those things, but theoretically there are some broken swords out there that could be reforged into something. But I don't know if it would make it. Might be more of an interesting story or a novelty than like a really great sword. Yes. I don't know, incidentally, if you can hear the background stuff that's happening, because it sounds, to me anyway, it sounds like a horse just took a piss in the background, but it's a fizzy water tank. No horses peeing in the background. But I don't know if the mic actually picks it up, so that might just be more information than you all needed. Rob, you are indeed catching me live, so you got to throw some good questions out my way. Again, sorry, I cannot ever seem to master camera placement, so camera here, chat over here. But yes, you have caught me, and you are now able to flood the chat with all of the things that you would like me to potentially ramble about. Because if I were a better, more competent streamer, I would have topics at hand or something to maybe discuss that was relevant or poignant or be able to guide a conversation. But I was planning on playing video games, and it just wasn't going very well. Yes, have the old chunks made into a stack of orshigati to make. Yeah. So the part of the reason that I haven't done that in the past is really that it's just expensive to do. It's a neat idea, and theoretically one might come out, but I wonder if you can maybe see if I back up. There's the trophies back there, so to speak. Maybe we can get out of the way and the camera will focus, or maybe not. But that stack of stuff is broken. The tips of the broken ones that I keep up there. I've sent some of them away though, and so they're not all there, but there's certainly a fair number of the broken tips I was able to recover that the pond did not consume. Teflon Drunk? Is that the name? Teflon Drunk? What do I do for a living? I do supply chain stuff. So I'm not really shy about letting anyone know where I work, but I don't announce it publicly on YouTube I don't know. Most of the people know that I ramble about swords on the internet at work. So it's not exactly some sort of grand secret or anything, but it would be imprudent of me to name the company that I work at. But it's probably not all that hard to find. But I do supply chain stuff, and I move boxes from various. I work mostly with service parts in supply chain stuff. So if you think of parts for TVs and appliances and things like that, I run a supply chain, and that manages those kind of things, so that people can have repairs done and the like. It's not. I don't know that it's at all in the same type of thing as swords. The only crossover that I think I really have from my day job to the sword hobby is that I deal with folks overseas quite a bit. I've dealt with a number of folks in China. I don't have as many conference calls now, but I used to have quite a few of them in the evenings to work with China, and so I'm familiar with some of the supply chain challenges that come in with freight and getting things over here across the pond, so to speak. Some of the delays, challenges, and nuances of that kind of stuff. But as you might imagine, service parts are not the same as swords. So I don't know much about that, about how their supply chain works. But because I work with manufacturers and stuff like that, I have some vague idea of a different industry and how that works. And I imagine there's some crossover between the businesses. But otherwise, it gets really boring and mathy, and I don't know that it's particularly interesting. If it is, I could drone on about it, but I imagine I would start seeing the number of viewers decline rapidly if I started talking about, if I even continue rambling about that one. So I'll stop there unless there's more questions. Have you found a bear blade for the My Little Pony katana? Stephanie, I have not yet. There's one very compelling offer from somebody who offered a Huawei folded blade, but it was $400 and it was just a bit out of my price league, even though I think I might be able to make that work. But I haven't found one yet. Oddly, like, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I'm looking for a Huawei piece or something along, even if it's a little older or something like that, that's reasonably zazzy, but to keep costs down is as strange as it sounds. To spend like $2,000 on a project and only have $200 of that wrapped up in the blade might sound crazy. But that's kind of how it lays out. And I don't think that I'd be able to really muster more for it if I had something really fancy to kind of match the price. So given that I'm going to try and sell it when it's done, that's kind of the direction I'm thinking. I don't know that a My Little Pony fan is also going to be a fan of, I don't know, but no, the short answer is no. I've had my eye out, my ear to the ground, so to speak, but nothing quite came up yet. I'm still looking though. The project isn't dead. It's noodling around. I just have to find the right stuff. I've also kind of been pondering what it would cost to make like custom fittings and things like that, or how I might be able to augment different pieces. So I'm sure I could get like earrings with My Little Pony stuff on them, and how I might be able to change earrings into Manuki. Again, like some of that maybe more mass produced kind of stuff would, uh, depending on the quality of the item, might actually fit pretty well. I've seen people use earrings, or at least like take parts of pendants and things like that apart to use on sword furniture in the past. And so I'm kind of thinking about that too. How am I going to get it to work? But the blade, I got to find a blade to start with before I go too much further. Oddly, I did, talking about the My Little Pony, I saw a wig for Rainbow Dash, and I thought, what would it be okay to inlay a wig? Like, if I think about having a rainbow pattern on a katana, right, and having it zazzy or special in some way, getting the right colors and all that kind of stuff can be a little bit challenging. Matching several different colors of lacquer to be similar. So buying something that already has that color palette integrated in it that would be correct to whatever character happens to be, seemed like a good idea. And so I was talking with the mystery man in black, and I said, would it be possible to like take a wig and stretch out the fibers of the wig and then like wrap it around like a candy cane or something like that on the scabbard and still have it show up? And the short answer was no. I mean, possible, yes, but practical and look good did not seem likely. So most of my ideas to make something functional have gotten shot down, and I got to go back to the drawing board. But yes, anyway, as you can tell, I'm still thinking about it, still noodling on it, and I'll have to be particular. When I do have a blade that I think is suitable for the My Little Pony katana, I will probably talk about it more, and maybe be a little bit more chatty about the process. And I'll try to draw some stuff out and share some of the potential designs that I think may be nice. And my hope is that well, not my hope, but I need to go in it with the intent of keeping a My Little Pony katana, because nobody will want to buy it. So ultimately, I need to be satisfied with it, because I very well may be the lifelong owner of such a piece. So anyway, yes, good question though. Looks like a bunch of swords. Well, maybe you're talking about the chunk in the back. I'm already behind on chat, as is customary for my now semi-customary Ramble streams. Do you mind secondary bevels in your katana? Yes, I do mind mathematics. Mathematics. Oh, that's going to be a tough one. I don't like them. It's the inevitable conclusion of me trying to sharpen, because I don't really know how to get around a sharpening stone and not create a secondary bevel. So anytime that I break out the belt sander, I create a secondary bevel on the katana, and it works, and it's serviceable, and it cuts to Tommy mats, and it does the thing. There's probably some consequence to having a secondary bevel that I might notice if I'm a better cutter than I happen to be. But for the things that I cut in the backyard and the results that I tend to get from them, I don't complain about it a whole lot on the blades that I put it on. It cuts bottles and things like that just fine. But yes, I don't like it. I don't know how to avoid it. I don't know how to sharpen without creating a secondary bevel. And that's just a limitation of my capability, and not knowing how to do it with a stone. There is some other consequence though of sharpening with the stone. So we, at the Toyama Ryu dojo that I go to, Seth is the teacher there, and before he was the teacher, he was kind of the proficient sharpener of the group, and he could make his way around kind of getting the sword sharpened and correcting the geometry and making it very suitable to be a high performance lawnmower, if you will. But in the process of doing it, mars up the sword quite a bit if you're just trying to get an edge on to do proficient cutting. So if I did have some proficiency with a stone, I would probably also mar the blade up quite a bit more than I do with the secondary bevel. I create this like very shiny secondary bevel, which is noticeable, but at the same time, like the hamon and the other surfaces of the blade are generally not too scratched up in comparison to what they would be if I were doing it with a sharpening stone. Wild, the best $500 katana That's 50 or so inches because I don't like small. I don't know. I don't know of a $500. Sometimes you can find the cold steel. They have a 32-inch sword, and it's not fun to move around, but it is a bigger one, 50 inches in blade. I don't know. And then there's the Nagamaki, and I think the Nagamaki is shorter than 50 inches too. So I don't know. I don't know that there are a lot of options in that realm. I'm sure there's some, but I imagine they're for under $500 in an obscure like Odachi kind of thing. It's probably not going to be great. I think I've maybe seen some Musashi style pieces, but I'm drawing a blank on them. I don't know that I could really recollect or provide anything useful. Hunter, and again, I'm sorry about being behind on chat. I will try to work through. Last time I did this, by the way, I'll try to call when like your last questions can get in, because my plan is to stream for roughly another 45 minutes, but that means I'll probably stream for like an hour and 45 minutes. But I'll try to call when the questions are done, and I'll work through and try not to skip over. Usually there's not so many people in these lives that I can't get a handle on it, but I'm slow to respond to chat, so I'm sorry about that. Is that a Hanwei Basket Hill broadsword behind you? It is. You are correct. Oh, that's an easy one. I like the way it feels too. It doesn't feel shitty. It's actually pretty maneuverable and fun. I haven't done a review on it though, or played with it that much. But I remember I got it in a lot of swords, and it's very fun to move. Did I skip something? No, I didn't. Do I Madam Ethics? Do I mind? Hopefully, I'm saying that right. Madam Ethics, I think. Okay. Do I mind? I don't. It depends on the sword. Like, would I want it on every sword? No. Swords that I feel are disposable enough for me to sharpen, or will inevitably break, and I can't test effectively without sharpening it. It's not gonna show well, or I feel like it's appropriate, or anyway. At such a time where I deem it appropriate on a sword, then I don't mind the secondary bevel, though the alternative would always be preferred. If I could have a sword that was at the same level of keenness to do whatever type of cutting I was going for without a secondary bevel, that is always my preference on a katana anyway. Do I mind them though? I mean, no. On certain things I don't. Like I have a big cold steel piece that the warrior katana that I got from Swordfriend Arthur. I sharpened that a while ago. It's got a secondary bevel on it. Still, I go swing it around, and it's okay. I don't mind that it's on that sword. But if it were on a really, really high end fancy katana, it would be kind of an eyesore. It would, I wouldn't like that. Eric Hussein, hello, sir. Wild. I live in South New Hampshire. We should spar. Oh, you're talking to Madam Ethics. Have fun whacking each other. Jay, what is the best sword for destroying Amazon boxes? The closest one. I don't know that you really need any type of special sword to destroy Amazon boxes, depending on the type of Amazon boxes that you get. I imagine they ship some things in wooden crates that are freight, or large wooden gaylords or something like that. And so you might need something more robust to do that. But generally speaking, nothing special is required to chop through a cardboard box. I have a lot of those. I don't generally chop cardboard boxes either. I suppose that's a fair target. I'm starting to run out of stuff to, like, at least to Tommy mats to cut, and they're really expensive now and hard to find. And so thinking of like what else to do, I've thought also about doing like a tube of ballistics gel or something like that, but it's expensive and frustrating. It's also really cold. I haven't done a lot of cutting outside lately because it's been bitter cold. In a jello target would probably freeze up and be more like an ice block. So gotta go back to the drawing board on that one. Teflon Drunk, do you think another source of tatami mats will be more available to us in the US soon? No. That would be my short answer. I don't think so. I haven't heard any rumblings of it. Everyone is really short on mats, and the school at the tatami folks, or not the tatami, the Toyama Ryu school that I go to, the teachers there usually have somebody that's importing mats, and apparently they're not able to get them. And where they primarily got used mats was old flooring in Japan, but I guess they're reusing flooring, or the people that were making tatami aren't doing it the same way, and it certainly caused some disruption in what was previously a garbage that was used to chop in half is now not happening. So tough to say what the future of that will be, but I think it's an opportunity to find another alternative. The part that I found attractive about ballistics gel as well is that I could melt it or something again and then reuse it, and I wouldn't have to make a bunch of nasty water and and stuff or deal with that. It'd probably present different challenges, especially in the weather. But short answer to your question is no. I don't think the situation with tatami is going to improve anytime soon, and so I think a different medium is worth exploring. And I don't know what that'll look like, but hopefully a cost-effective target can be found. Chris, if you're using a slack belt, it may look like a secondary bevel, but it's actually an Appleseed edge if you're doing it the way I think you are. I might be, I might not be. I do tend to sharpen on the slack belt side of things, but I've gone so far as to take it under a pretty fine macro edge or macro lens and look at it. And there's certainly a geometric shape to it that looks more like a secondary bevel, and it's not just an optical illusion of the part is shiny or polished to a higher degree or differently, or burnished or something like that in contrast to the edge. So usually when I get a katana and I sharpen it with the slack belt kind of thing, might just be how I'm starting it or that I'm taking too much off. I finish it usually that way, but at some point I usually have to use the plate section of it to get it the way to get it to feel sharp anyway. So I do think that I'm creating a secondary bevel for the most part. Even if I don't, though, the way that I've seen people do it, I don't know, it looks goofy, and I'm pretty convinced that there's some type of secondary bevel there rather than an Appleseed edge. Or if it is the Appleseed edge is really close to the edge. It's more like the seed tapers down rather than having a little bit more meat further back on the edge. I could be wrong, though. All right. What's the best way to get a katana valued? You bought one in 19. I don't know that I have a great answer for that one. The easiest way that I can think of is you can post on the message boards for Nihonto US, or not Nihonto US, Nihonto message board. I can't remember what the name of it is. It's like Militaria or something. But there's Nihonto message board, and there's a question section in there, so you can register as a member, post some photos, and you can find some information about it from there. And then you can certainly ask kind of a community opinion on what things are worth. You could also reach out to people that buy them. That would be more like a Nihonto US, or some folks are, that deal in swords, and what a dealer will pay for you. Obviously, they need to make money, so it'll be less than maybe what it'll go for on the market. And you can also throw it up on eBay. And once you identify it and clearly articulate, what the thing is and what condition it's in, you can, throw it up for some exorbitant amount of money with a make best offer kind of thing, and see what the market tells you it's worth. Because at least with swords in the Nihonto realm of things, or any kind of sword really, there's, especially if it's a special one and not like a more mass production piece, they often have to find the right buyer to really get what they're worth, right? There's a lot of taste and subjectivity involved in it, especially when you're talking about, a sword that costs as much as a car. You got to find the right person to buy it. So there's often the liquidation value of a thing and what somebody will kind of immediately buy it for. And then there's, probably the max value of what it's worth. And that might take a very, very long time to find somebody who likes it enough to justify that. It all depends. It all depends on the sword and stuff. If you bought something in Kyoto in 1994, it could also be any Aito that's not worth a lot of money, or like a touristy kind of sword. It also could be something schmancier. Michael, how is it that you speak or read Russian? I lived there for a little bit, which is given the topic of the day, and that there's some invasion stuff happening, and they're in the news, and it's not pleasant. It was a different time. When I lived in Russia, Putin had just become president, and it was like 20 years ago now. But yes, I moved there many, many years ago and did not speak Russian at the time. My Russian, in fairness, is not fantastic. I can say "Я из Канады, не меня стреляю," which, if I'm saying it correctly, means like I'm from Canada, don't shoot. I can say stuff like that. I can argue with my wife a little bit, but I can't. It's not like I'm going to be reading poetry or confusing anyone that I speak like a toddler. Oddly enough, in terms of talking like a toddler, I know there's other questions, so I'll try not to belabor the point here, or at least go on too much of a tangent. But my Russian is at sometimes very toddler level. There's a fun story with my wife where she speaks Russian, and she also speaks English, and that's mostly what she speaks to me, because my Russian is not at her English level. But I lived in Russia for a long time, and I always thought the word for hand was lapu, which is not the word for hand. And not that hand comes up in everyday conversation, and not that I use the word all the time, but I was reasonably confident I knew what the word for hand was. And so like give me a hand or hand me that. I might use those colloquialisms directly in Russian, which wouldn't be the case. But nobody ever corrected me and told me the correct word for hand, which is ruka, or I think that's the word for hand. My wife might be lying to me. But anyway, I went to a college class because I thought, it'd be nice if my Russian improved and I could speak I could speak to my wife more romantically and more fully, and have more thorough and fluent conversations with her. And I took a class on Russian, and I remember the professor, the word hand came up, and I said the word lapu, and he's like, and he was this very monotone guy, and he just delivered it with a punchline that burns into my memory. And he's like, that does not mean hand, it means kitty's paw. I was like, what are you talking about? It means hand. I've been saying this word for years and years and years. And the professor was like, no, it does not mean hand, it means kitty's paw. So I go home to my wife, and I'm like, this can't be right. Maybe it's some sort of dialect thing, because there's been a few words that dialect wise were like that. And she was like, oh no, it does mean kitty's paw. I just thought it was cute. So here I am, a big grown ass man over in burly Russia. I'm talking to people. I'm like, nice to meet you. Here is my kitty's paw. It's absolutely ridiculous that she there's been a few funny things like that. But suffice to say, sometimes I talk like a toddler in Russian. So speak might be a strong word, but hopefully that answers some questions. I said I wouldn't ramble on for too much about that, and then I went ahead and did anyway. Wild roll-up newspapers and wet. Yeah, the rolled newspapers are good. Just not a lot of people get the newspaper anymore. If you can get it, it is a good target. It's a little time-consuming to get, but it's the closest thing to tatami that I've found. It's a lot messier though too, but it's good. Green bamboo, Chris. I agree. I'm hoping that I can grow some in the summer. I don't know how quick bamboo would grow in Minnesota, where it's 10 months of winter, but I'm hoping I can get something functional for cutting if I can find some seeds or something to grow over the summer. It's supposed to grow really quick, so I'm thinking that while it's warm here, maybe I'll get the best of both worlds. I can plant something bamboo-wise, have it grow, and then it'll die, and I won't have the like rampant weed problem that I've heard it can be. Wild, you can. Yes, I can do stuff in the garage. It's a pain in the butt to swing a sword in the garage though, especially because there's cars and crap in there, and I've had some swords break and chunks go flying, and it goes flying into things that I don't want it to fly into. In a pinch, I can use the garage, but I'm not overly keen on it, having whacked my garage door post a few times. Jay, you got down to your last tatami mat. I have a couple left, but I kind of almost have to save them for reviews and stuff now. Like I can't, if I'm going to use it as a target by which to judge other things, like I have to save what I have left to do, and I can't just cut it for fun now. It's always been costly, but now it's even more so. Yes, read the free newspapers. Fair. Yeah, I've saved a stack of them. It's time consuming to roll up, and it's not as consistent a target. I mean, I imagine it would be if I got better at rolling it and was able to make consistent thicknesses and whatnot. But I have some varying degrees of it at the moment. Maybe putting a little too much pressure on the slack belt. Yeah, that's entirely possible. I can definitely I can definitely say that the way I sharpen swords is not great. It does the job and often what I needed to do, but is it the best way or the only way or even a good way? I would argue no. I tried a few different things to sharpen swords, and I usually just screw it up and don't end up with a lot of an edge. But the process that I use now with a 1x30 belt sander was like a $50 sander thing from Harbor Freight, and then I spent $30 on knife sharpening belts, and another 15 on a leather strop thing. And working those in succession tends to get me an edge, but it certainly comes at a cost, and it loses the very fine edge. So there's this. And it creates like shoulders on one side of the blade too, where it comes out of the habaki and then kind of drops off as it rolls into the sharpened section. So it takes off like a millimeter of the finest edge and leaves it sometimes weird looking. But it cuts better. So Drift Excess. I was looking at getting a Sword of Roven. So you think it would be a worthwhile purchase in the sub $300? I liked the Sword of Roven. I had one I had one a long time ago, and it's been a minute. I did like it from the assortment that was available from Windlass. I think there's some customizations and stuff. It's a popular sword, I think, to tinker with, but I would probably rather have a Ronin. Yes. That would be my short answer. The Sword of Roven, though, is a nice one from Windlass, but I think either way they're pretty beefy pieces. I'm not sure which one I would like, but the Sword of Roven is a compelling one if you can get one for $300. I remember I got one on like deal of the day for $130 or something like that. It was a pretty good deal at the time. I'm thinking of getting a Hanwei Lion Dog Wakizashi. Do you think it's a good choice for the price range? What would you recommend? Depends on where you're buying it, what the price range is. The Lion Dog Wakizashi isn't one that I've really played with. I don't get a lot of Wakizashi. They're less common in general, and they are less common in the secondhand market where I tend to pick stuff up. What I recall from the Lion Dog Waki, though, from what I've seen, is it looks pretty beefy. I generally don't think it's a bad thing. I like the steel. I like the look of it, but I can't give you really any pointers on how it feels, and I would expect the same kind of build quality that you would get from most Hanwei pieces. And so if that's what you're looking for, then I would give it a thumbs up. I like the steel that it's made from. It holds up pretty well, or at least it's supposed to be some sort of specialty Hanwei steel. And the bamboo mat that I have is made out of a similar steel, and the bamboo mat has held up really, really well for me. So whatever recipe they're using, they tend to make pretty good swords out of it, from what I can tell. What is your best recommendation, Joel? What is your best recommendation for an affordable katana Iaido sword? I would highly recommend you buy one out of Japan, like one of the Minasoka or whatever the cheap ones are from Tazando. I have one somewhere in a corner over there that I keep, and I do think that a $300 Iaido out of Japan, which is usually kind of the starting point, and they don't look spectacular. They often look kind of cheaper than the $300 swords you would buy out of China that are sharp, but they tend to function for Iaido better as a practitioner tool. They're not steel, and so they don't really hold an edge, but you don't have to worry about cleaning them if you're doing techniques where you're touching the blade. You're not going to be able to cut anything with it, but the sayas tend to be tension right. They tend not to rattle the same way. The ito tends to be tighter and hold up for a bit longer. So the fittings are sometimes cheaper and uglier looking on the really cheap Japanese made Iaido, but they tend to hold together well if you're going to use them as a practitioner's tool for a very long time. So I've had now that Iaido for the Iaito, that's a really cheap Minasoka base level $300 one for a few years, and I use it regularly enough because it'll sit in the back of my car through winter and bounce around. And like, I don't take very good care of it because it's kind of like an extra one for me. Because I may have like forgotten my main one in another state for a while, and I realized I needed something to bring around with me that was not as devastating to lose. So and it's held up really well, and the tension has remained right, and it's been a good tool. So that would be my recommendation. I don't find that Iaito out of China, specifically built to be Iaito, are as good a tool. They tend to just not have some of the little nuances that you care about if you're practicing Iaido primarily. Not that they're bad or can't do it. I also don't mean that. I would, if the task is only Iaido, then I would rather have an Iaito out of Japan, one of the cheap Minasoka or something like that for $300 than an equivalent $300 Chinese made pieces, because the Ito tends not to be as tight. The sayas tend to rub or rattle a little bit. There's just some nuances. They're not built quite the same way. Hopefully that answers your question. Do you freehand sharpen? I tried it once. Rambles. Now I'm scared to try it again. I do. Phil Martin gave me an idea of giving like a guide and trying to hold that angle, and I did that for a minute, and it worked out better. And now I kind of freehand grind and keep an angle, but holding a sword consistently and trying to use my feet to zoom in and out, so to speak, don't work as well for me as kind of moving sections and then blending it with a final pass. I'm really bad at sharpening myself, and I do mar the blades up when I do it, and so I wouldn't do it to one I care about either. Like my bamboo mat is due for sharpening, but I don't feel comfortable doing it. So where was I? Yes. I'm gonna have to find some bamboo, Chris. I need to find like the variety that grows thick enough to be fun for cutting, and then maybe I can keep some inside so I have some to plant when the summer months come. Hello, Aaron. Kitty Paw. Michael, you took Russian for a couple of semesters in college in the 80s, and I think it's the only reason I got a D and F, because I took the TA that did the grading out a couple times. Yeah, fair enough. I did not Yeah, in college, I did not do particularly well. I did okay because I had a passable familiarity with the language already, but it kind of bit me in the ass because like the first 2 semesters of Russian that I took were really focused on the building blocks of the language, and I kind of it was easy for me to understand them, but I never really learned English particularly well, and so when they started talking about all the different tenses and cases of the language, it didn't like find footing in my brain, and when I needed it in the later part, the second year of Russian, I really paid the price for it, and it was not the best grades that I've gotten. I found it very difficult to keep up. Joe, Mr. Spontaneous live stream, that is correct. Hello. I'm spontaneously live streaming again. All right. Keep the area mode. Where can I get bamboo? Like what variety grows well to cut? I mean, it'll probably die because the ground freezes 4 feet deep where I live. Like it becomes tundra, but yeah, it's not quite permafrost, but it freezes down usually up to 4 feet. So bummer. I start my first Shinkendo class this weekend, and one of the reasons I joined, I thought, was for Tamashigiri. So Russ, your school might have something different or a different line on cutting tatami than what I've heard, but more than likely they're going to find similar struggles. But you might cut other things as well. So some people have access to green bamboo or other cutting targets. So I wouldn't count yourself down and out depending on your school. Wild. So in New Hampshire, I live in Minnesota, so I call it the middle finger of Canada. So the like really bitter cold weather rides usually along the border of the U.S., nicks the tip of Maine, obviously covers Alaska, but then like drips over the whole of Minnesota and then rides the border. So I call it the middle finger of Canada if you look at the weather patterns. So it gets bitter cold here, and bamboo, at least anything that I've seen, doesn't grow in zone 4. I guess that's where I'm at. And some of the bamboo that I've seen growing in like the arboretum or that seems to do even passably well here doesn't get very thick. So I might have to replant it every year, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If I can get some usable targets over a season, to me, that would be sufficient. Do you have any experience with Thai swords? I think those are like the Da kind of thing. Like I know that's Burmese, but not really. I saw them when I was in Thailand. They look really neat, but I can't say that I've moved them around. The examples that I saw also tended to have round handles, which I thought was strange. I didn't get a chance to see like museum examples and maybe just the touristy kind of stuff that I was seeing, because there were a few sword shops that I went to go visit, but a lot of them had rounded handles, which I thought was strange for an edged weapon. But I can't draw a whole lot of conclusions from that. Have you ever put your mitts on a yukuni from the Munetoshi? No, I've had from Munetoshi. I had the performance cutter, and that was a really fantastic sword. Little on the fragile side, but I thought it was a fantastic sword. Munetoshi is one of those companies that I don't think gets a ton of credit, but there's swords that I've really enjoyed from them. They don't make it anymore, but I remember one called the Tessin, and it was like this little green leprechaun looking sword. And it's one of the ones that I kind of regret selling. There's a few of them that I've really, really enjoyed, and that as I think back on them, I kind of wish I'd kept in my collection. And one of them was a Munetoshi Tessin. It was a very light, I mean, it was a well-balanced blade, favoring maybe the agility over the heft side of things, but it was folded and pretty, and I sold it because it looked like a little green leprechaun of a sword. Everything was green on it, but I really liked the balance and feeling of it, and the blade was folded and pretty as well, and it cut pretty well. So at least from what I remember. But the swords that I've seen from Munetoshi tended to have some uniqueness to it. They tended to have some unique fittings, and they all had a little bit of character. So if you see Munetoshi, it's not something that it's something I have recommended, but it's not a brand that I've had a ton of swords from. But the ones that I've had, I've certainly enjoyed. Jay, as I've been buying swords, I realized that I draw arbitrary price ranges for low, medium, high tiers. Do you do this, and what are the ranges in your tiers? That's a good question. Generally, yeah. I mean, I think of an entry level sword is under $500, and the sub $300 is kind of where I would put in a inexpensive sword. I don't know about cheap, because there's been some very compelling, cool looking swords that I think were very feature rich and very nice for $300. The Ryan sword folded one, as well as the Jakku folded Sanmai blades with bohees and all sorts of nifty features and stuff on them, were all around $300. But I would kind of consider that an inexpensive sword, even though I wouldn't call it cheap. Those don't strike me as cheap. But then you have the like tuition, I guess, the get dumb stuff out of your system, but nobody will recommend it. That's like the $50, $60 swords. If you're not sure if you like the hobby, buy a $50 sword. If you want to go whack trees, buy a $50 sword. If you have a really nice sword and you want to try some things with it, you want to practice sharpening, you want to take swords apart, practice custom, buy a $50 sword, and then get all the dumb out or the experience out, or learn your lessons or damage it because you're in it for less money. And I think that's why I kind of call it like the tuition sword, right? Because it's more of a learning tool than anything else. Above $500 to around $1,000 is more your mid tier, and what that can get you runs the gamut. There's not a whole lot of consistency in terms of what that extra $500 gives you, but there's a lot of things in that category that tend to offer folded this or customized fittings that, or some sort of specialty something or other in that price point. 2 to 5 is the high-end production realm of things, and the entry level of custom type stuff. So you can sometimes find James Raw pieces, Prismac pieces in that price range, Pavel Bulf pieces. I'm not sure if Rado sword would do something even in the 5 range. I'm not sure. And then Motohara and stuff operates in that. Citadel operates in that. So there's some mass production, and there's some. When I say entry level, I mean the price point to get into the category of custom, like a fully custom sword. And then 20 to 50 grand is really, really expensive. I suppose that's what I think. And when I think of those, I don't think of anything like to whack trees down. I think of more art pieces than anything else, or pieces with some sort of collectability or investment potential. But yeah, I do think of sometimes in categories, but as the reviewer, I try to think of things in categories in comparison to other things, like so a Zombie Tools, a Katana. I can't remember if that's the actual name. I think it's around like $500-ish, and I could be off on that. There's Zombie Tools fans. I had the Wakizashi version from them many years ago, and it impressed me for what it was. But it wouldn't be fair to compare that to, if it's $500. I'm not sure. I'm shooting from the hip here, so don't take the price as a direct quote. But if that was a $500 sword, it wouldn't be fair to compare that to a $500 katana from Hanwei or Huawei or Jakku or the like, right? Because they're different purposes. And so likewise, if somebody was looking for a zombie apocalypse style thing in a Japanese theme, how well is it going to hold up to bashing against motorcycle helmets? If that's the test of good, it's not. I then couldn't compare the Japanese sword to the Zombie Tools kind of thing, right? So there's categories, but they also, I think, go by price tier, but also by use case and what the intention is. There's a lot of different context to it. That's not the only way to kind of slice the pie up, but those are, how much is it and what do you want to do with it, are certainly two kind of categorical factors that I try to consider when I'm thinking about if a sword is good or bad. Ooh, I rambled on. Where was I? I lost my place in the chat. Fairly new to getting into blades, but I find it difficult to find a decent naginata. No, it is. I haven't found a good one. The Hanwei one was, I don't know how to say the first part of your name, so I'll say Delta. I like the Hanwei one. It's a little bit on the big side, but it required a custom shaft and like another, $600 to $800 or $1,000. I can't remember how much it was. When I got the customized shaft version of it, then I really liked it as a naginata. But I haven't found a naginata from a company that I would like to really train with. The poles are usually the weak point, and most of them don't make tangs that are long enough. So that tends to be the concern. I'd like to have like a 6 to 10 inch naginata blade with a reasonable curve, not overly sickle shaped or anything, but the tang needs to be like 30 inches long. So, and that's not usually what I see done. And the poles tend to be made out of pallet wood, and they tend to break. Naginatas are like a push cut weapon, at least a lot of the ways that I learned. Obviously, you can slash with them as well, but these big sweeping all the way from the end of the pole cuts aren't at least things that you commonly learn or would deploy regularly. But still, like, you'd want to be able to swing it hard, and a lot of the poles, whether it be the Yari's poles that I had from Dynasty Forge a long time ago, the Yari and Naginata poles that I've seen from Hanwei. There's a one that I have from Sabersmith over there that I haven't fully tested yet, but I've makes me pretty leery that it's going to hold that Nagi blade in there. And then obviously there's been some stuff on Ryan's sword recently from Samurai Bird. He put something out about a pole that broke on him. So those tend to be, I think, the really weak points. And it's expensive to have it done well by somebody in the US. But yes, it is a pain in the ass to find a Nagi. It's also very hard to find a Naginata bokin that's worth it. Getting like a nice bokin can be like $300 or $400, or a Naginata style pole to practice Naginata Jitsu stuff. But yes, pain in the ass. I share your pain. I don't have one that I like at the moment. The closest one that I've liked to has been the custom one that was redone by sword friend Corey many years ago as a Naginata. That one came out very nice. I liked the pole. I liked how it felt. I liked how it moved, but it was still a little bigger than I would have liked to have on a Naginata. Wild. Best blade I got was a Hanjin for $160 and holds up to all abuse. But it may die. Yes, it would likely die to the croquet stick of doom. Mina Soka, I'm probably saying it wrong, but Joel, it's the cheap stuff at the Tazanda website, and I think those are sold by Yamato Budogu and a few other sites as well. But that's the one that I have was from Tazando, and it's that what you type there seems to be about right. Mina Soka or something to that extent. And it's worked really well for $300. It's preferable. Nagina and other pole arms tend to be quite a novelty. They can get kind of pricey. To make or making anything properly can be difficult. Same thing. Yeah, they're certainly less prolific in the market, and so the more obscure, the less money there is in it, and I don't find particularly good examples. It's not always the case. I do think that the Hanwei Yari, like at least the shape of them, is pretty cool and pretty well done. Dynasty Forge a number of years ago made a Jumungi Yari and another Yari, and I thought those were pretty good. But they're not. The blades themselves are pretty good. The Naginata from Hanwei, I think, is a little big. Chris Cutlery used to make a Naginata that was a little more appropriately sized, but the tangs tend to be short on the Nagi side of things. They do tend to be more of a novelty, though, and not something that you find very commonly. There's shipping restrictions and stuff like that too. So to ship anything over 48 inches, you start running into some premium costs. And to ship a 6-foot pole, and they're supposed to be like you're often limited to 6 feet, and most of the poles are supposed to be longer than that. So you almost have to find somebody locally that can do the work so that you can have like a 9-foot pole arm. Otherwise, it's not possible to ship. Well, it's possible, but really, really expensive to do. The LKHN Hansha Wild, I've seen that. Sifu Cuddle did some videos on that. It looks pretty cool. I would love to check one out, but I'm not sure if LKHN will send me more stuff or not. I haven't made it through the stuff that they did send me, though, in fairness. So I've got some catching up to do before before I play with any pole arms. But I did see the Batwing one. Looks pretty cool. And the pole that they send, I don't know how well it would hold up to use, though. That's a challenging point, but I see more rattan and stuff like that in the scabbards from LKChen. They use different woods than what I've seen in other Chinese, at least in Katana anyway. Not other Chinese swords, but in Katana. So maybe they'll have something that will hold up and not be as brittle. Chris, you'll see if you can look up bamboo species. I would say keep some in a large pot somewhere indoors, and when you can in the summer. Yeah, I've got the backyard to do it. I could find a spot to give it some sun and next to a lot of water. You can go to the Saido. Yeah, that's another site, Joel. So Stephanie quoted here the Saido. I don't know how to pronounce it. Seido. That's another site. They have good bokin, and they've done, and they also sell Yaito as well as some fittings and stuff like that. That's one that I always forget. I know it's a popular one too. Valendo, torture test of the Chujen. That is on the list of things to do. I have been asked not to break it, so I don't know if the Chujen will see the croquet steak of doom because the folks at LKChen asked me not to break that one, which I don't mind doing, but I will do something more aggressive with it than I've done. I did kind of a visual tour from what I recall, but I haven't sharpened it. I haven't done much of anything with it, and so, but yeah, I really like that one. It's still a very fine feeling sword, and I will get around to doing some more aggressive and in the abusive territory of things, but I'll let you know that the torture of it, I won't intentionally destroy it. It might break. I mean, that's possible. I'll chop wood or aggressive things and do a little bit of sword v sword kind of stuff. So it won't come out unscathed, but I'm also not going to try and destroy it. When am I going to do it? I don't know, because it's on the list. I got to get through the Heavenly Horse. It'll be the last one that I do because I don't want to break it. I don't want to destroy it. I like it. But it'll probably be the last one. I still have the Heavenly Horse, the Tang Hang Dao, I think, as well. I cut with that one the other day too. Also a very, very good cutter, and I think that's it. And then I think I'm caught up from there. So anyway, those are the ones I got to get through first, and it'll probably be late summer, frankly, before I'm done with it, or maybe early summer, ballpark. But it's months away yet. I don't see, and in fairness, I have taken the Chujen out and played with it a little bit, not cut it to any extensive torture testy stuff, but I've handled that one just because of my affection for it more than I have others, and it really kind of remains. I haven't bashed it into anything, but for moving around, I haven't noticed any creaks or issues pop up shy of the scabbard. Has shrunken and doesn't fit it particularly well anymore. But that's about the only thing I can add, is that it was really tight. It kind of stuck on the blade, and like now it doesn't, it sticks out like a 1/4 inch. And if I push it in all the way, then I have to get really aggressive, and it's a pretty thinly made scabbard, and I feel like I have to be pretty handsy with it. That may be unique to the one that I have, because it's not a problem that I've heard from other folks. But anyway, that's the only gripe that I would really note about it. Crazy Engineer, is 1045 a good steel for a sword? It is, yes. There are better steels, but 1045 is usually a very cost-effective option. But as I think about the Ronin RK series that I've tested in the 1045 range, or the Musashi pieces that I've tested in that range, all have proven to be pretty durable, okay swords to test things on, or for short activities. I mean, they've held up reasonably well. They don't do edge retention particularly well, and they're not very hard, so they take a bend a little bit easier than some. But I mean, generally speaking, you can look on the YouTube channel and see the Ronin RK series, the Musashi $60 sword or $50 sword was one. I think the Musashi Dragonfly, that might have been 1060 or 1045. I'm not honestly sure, but I do know that the Ronins are advertised as 1045, and I beat the shit out of those, and they held up for the price that you paid, I think pretty good. Now, if you buy a 1045 sword and you're paying $1,000 for it, I might say you could get a different type of steel would probably be expected in that price range. But in the like under $150 range, I don't necessarily think there's a huge objection to having 1045 if it's otherwise a desirable sword to you. Just know that it's usually seen as like an entry level kind of sword steel. It's not bad, but it's not winning prizes either, I guess. Joe, Steel Forged and Fire, Sword and Knife. I'm going to just call you Joe, though. Matt, would you recommend zombie tools over APOC? Swords being currently sold in yes. I've held a few APOC pieces, and their zombie tools is way more expensive, though. I think anyway. The APOC stuff is not bad, and they both certainly appeal probably to the same market. But the zombie tool stuff has I don't know. There's an artistic flair to it that I appreciate. It's unique, and others don't kind of capture the zombie aesthetic, I think, the same way. The designs are also unique, and that can be said of the APOC stuff too. But I think the APOC things blend into like the cheaper novelty stuff more than the zombie tools things do, at least to my eye, though that's subjective. And they are surprisingly, I mean, for what they are, to be as robustly built, they're not as clubbish and brutish in the hand as I would expect them to be. So I've had a few zombie tools pieces. The one that stands out in my mind the most was the Wakizashi piece. And I remember the first time I got a zombie tools piece, I just thought it would be this overbuilt hunk of junk, and it wasn't. It had some character and class to it that when I got it in person, I really appreciated. So I would go for one of those. I've kind of been on the lookout for them, but it's actually worth noting that they tend to hold their value reasonably well. Not the same way that Albion does, but they don't generally sell for like half of what they were retail. They tend to hold their value a little bit better than some of the other swords on the market. And yeah, for what they are, I've thought highly of them. I didn't ever push one to the point of failure. It might be worth asking them again if they're keen on sending a review sample, because it sure would be fun to push one to failure. But yes, anyway, what I recall about them, Joe, was that they were a fun sword to move around, and it's not terribly hard to surprise me with swords. I like them a lot, and I try to find the good in them generally. But the zombie tools ones kind of stand out as something that I really had low expectations for, and came away a fan. So for what that's worth, I would say I would prefer that. I haven't had the same experience with the APOC stuff, and not that it's bad or that I'd poo-poo it or anything. But if you have the extra change to spend on the zombie tools and you find 2 examples of a sword that you like, I would choose the zombie tools if I had to pick. SBG is selling APOC longsword. I haven't had that one wild, so I can't speak too much about it. Crazy Engineer, what do you think of the SRK? I really, it's a special one. I actually have it. Do I have it handy? I do. It's even right over here. But the SRK, I don't want to stand up and get swords and stuff, but here's the SRK that I have, and I really happen to like this knife a lot. It feels nice and grippy and good in the hand. I do really enjoy it. Hopefully you feel the same way. This one is I don't know how they make a few different iterations of it, so I don't know which one you got, but the VG Sanmai version that I have, I do certainly enjoy. Armored Sweatpants, yes, you have caught it. You must enter questions because you've caught it, but I am technically trying to. I was going to go till 9. I'm not stopping just yet, so throw some questions in if you have them. Is it possible to distinct Tamahagane by looking at it? I'm going to guess you mean distinguish Tamahagane by looking at it. I can't. Maybe some can, but I can't say that I'm familiar enough with any steel to really be overly confident in just looking at it. What I do tend to notice is similar patterns in the folded iteration of folded types of swords that come out of China. So Hanwei, the Swedish powder steel that they have, has some similar folding patterns. Over time, there's been some differences over the years, but that has a similar pattern. Their fittings are usually unique, so that's one way to distinguish their swords as well. Some of the less expensive folded steel pieces out there, I'd note like LK Chen, a lot of the folded blades that they put out have a very similar pattern to them. It's appealing, and it's similar to the sword that I saw from Jaku and other Chinese swords out there. They have a pattern welded kind of blade that has similar patterns on the surface of it, and so you can kind of make out some of that stuff and identify like, well, I've seen this. It seems like a commonly used steel by many manufacturers, and so it's probably not Tamahagane. And if it looks weird and wild and all over the place, or not a particularly recognizable pattern, then maybe it's something else. But it's getting harder and harder to tell. I don't know if I could confidently identify a blade made of Tamahagane or a steel smelted and hammered out and done in a way similar to Tamahagane, if you want to be overly specific about it. Or if I could look at a Japanese sword and say this is Tamahagane versus Orishigane, I couldn't distinguish those things. Not the steel. All other things being equal, I don't know that I could identify that one was made from one steel or the other. Not that nobody can, but I can't. Well, I'll mail you out a Hanjin. I want to see it die. Happy to oblige. If you send things for the purposes of death and destruction on the croquet stake of doom, I can oblige you. Dark, love the info. Well, I'm glad it is useful. Jeremy, I have Japanese Tamahagane swords as well as Chinese-made swords. The fit and finish of the Japanese swords is what sets them apart from the Chinese ones. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. A lot of times the fit and finish, when you talk about the Koshrai in particular, the fit of the saya, the tapers of the lines on the woodwork, the placement of the kurigata, the finish work on the koiguchi, the tension, the shape of the habaki, the tightness of the ito, all of those little nuances tend to be better on Japanese manufactured blades. The Chinese blades, I think, are also distinct, though. They have a pretty, not that all the shapes are the same, but they tend to be very similar. In Japanese made blades don't, the ito tend to be very similar shape to Chinese made swords. But like a shinsakudo made by a smith or something, they usually have lines and patterns on the hamon and cleanliness of polish that surpass a lot of what comes out of China, at least in terms of what I see on the market. Not that what I see in the mass production realm represents the whole of everything manufactured in China, but at least what I see on the market, I agree, the fit and finish tends to stand apart. But it's a little more nuanced and deeper than that, I would argue. What do you think about the lowest Tamahagane prices? So if you're talking about the Tamagane pieces from Jaku, I haven't actually had one. I've had their folded stuff, and I thought it was good value for the money. And if I stretch that to their Tamagane pieces, I wouldn't expect that. Just based on the way you're asking, I don't mean to assume anything, but I would say that if you're expecting it to be a better performing sword, that you will be disappointed, and that the sword is not probably going to be better because it's Tamahagane. It will be harder to make and take more time and therefore cost more money. And it may have some artistic qualities that you find appealing, but it's not going to go faster or cut through anything better. And the fit and finish of the koshirai and whatnot is probably going to be very similar to what you would get on a sword at half the price from Jaku. So if it's performance you're after, I would say it's not worth your investment to buy Tamahagane from any manufacturer, not Jaku specifically. And if it's a closer tie to the way the historical swords are made, or something aesthetically about the folding pattern in the steel that you like, then I think Jaco is generally been pretty good. And the folded blade that I got from them was, I thought, a very good value. And if their Tamahagane blades are in that line, then I would expect good value from them for that money. Hopefully that helps. I just want to be clear that, like, if you're saying, what do I think about it? I have to be cautious because there's a lot of context that goes into a folded blade. And generally speaking, people are kind of coached by modern products that the more expensive it is, the better it is. And it doesn't work that way with swords all the time. It doesn't work that way with anything all the time. But generally, if you buy a computer that costs more money, it's probably faster and better. If you buy a car that costs more money, it's faster and better, or more efficient, or special. Like, there's a lot of things where money just generically buys you a better thing. In video games, the more expensive sword is always the better one. Not always, again, but I digress. The point is that Tamahagane specifically and folded stuff are more laborious to create, but they don't inherently make them better. And I would argue oftentimes they tend to be worse, not by a huge order of magnitude. But if I look at the swords that I've broken that have been folded in Sanmai and stuff, they tend to act a little bit, well, they're resilient, but they're softer as well. And if I contrast that with a through hardened, 1060 or 5160 blade, those tend to take the most punishment while simultaneously holding an edge, reasonably well for the types of crap I do in my backyard. So if that's the kind of stuff that you want to see a sword do, then I would argue that Tamahagane is probably not a great choice for you. Saul, I talked about tatami earlier, but yes, still in short supply from what I can gather. All right. I'm actually caught up with comments. Look at that. Crazy. For sure you don't expect it. Yeah, it's not necessarily the quality of a $5,000 sword, because for a $5,000 sword, I think it would be fair to expect a lot. And for a $600 sword made in Tamahagane by some people's very strict definition, it's probably not that. It's probably not a forge master and a Tatara, doing the whole spiritual burning scroll kind of thing. But they may make it from iron sand or similar to what the output of Tamahagane would. But depending on how you want to define Tamahagane, then it might be closer to Orishigane or like a house-made steel. But either way, it's more laborious, and the output is I would argue certainly more artistically valuable. It's going to be unique and special in that way, but it's not going to be a performance increase specifically. So if you have a $600 Tamahagane, or advertised as Tamahagane blade, that's unique and special and folded and all that and costs more money, the $300 blade of the same shape, size, and fitting set is probably going to perform better. If your definition of better is that it can whack things and not bend or break, and will potentially hold an edge better as well. And that's because if you have a 1060 blade or a 5160 blade, at least it would be my argument that the Chinese smiths that work in these mass production forges are more familiar with working with that homogeneous material and tend to do a better job heat treating it and tempering it and making a more resilient product out of it. And with Tamahagane, there's a lot of labor and a lot that can go wrong. And it's, I'd imagine that they don't push that material to its limits, given that if they break it, they have to start over, and it becomes very, very expensive to continue doing that. A lot of Japanese smiths break swords in the heat treatment process, and they have to start over, and it's a very painful thing to happen. I'd imagine that they're probably erring on the side of caution and maybe making it a little softer so it's less likely to break. That's speculation on my part, but there's just inherently more things that can go wrong in the manufacturing process of a Tamahagane blade, at least if I understand it correctly. And so that's kind of what you're paying for, the artistic value, and potentially it's similar to their homogeneous counterparts, but not necessarily. And so it seems a more prudent choice, if performance is the option, to go with the homogeneous material that those smiths and forges are familiar working with and can kind of are most likely to be able to unleash the full potential of said metal, or close to. Anyway, that's why, not the fit and finish or anything, but hopefully that's making sense in terms of what I'm throwing down. Are the guys doing Woot Steel, Eighth Sinner? Are the guys doing Woot Steel yet? Do you know? That could be. I imagine there are people trying to make similar things, but it's not a type of steel that I get to play with, any type of modern interpretation of Woots. All right. Wild. My best katana like sword was from Long Quan, and they call it a side sword, broadsword, for $200, like a lightsaber. After I had a guy sharpen it, there's plenty of great swords that can be had. The folks in Longchuan seem to know how to make swords. I get the impression that, like, there's the mass production side of things, and then there are people operating there that do much higher end pieces that I don't know if the U.S. market really ever gets to see. But I don't know that you can work with steel and make swords as often and as prolifically and not have kind of savants that rise to the top. And I don't know that we get to see their work in the mass production market. And it's not, it's funny, at least I'm familiar with some folks outside of Japan that make swords. even less. I know some of the most predominant names in sword manufacturing in Japan, but I don't know a lot of the up and comers and the mid tier smiths, if you will. I'm less familiar with Japanese smiths, which is kind of funny given my propensity to be interested in Japanese swords. But I know lots of smiths that makes Japanese style swords outside of Japan, and I know lots of American folks that make Japanese style swords. But I don't know a lot of high-end Chinese smiths that make Japanese style swords, but there are supposedly a great number of them, and every now and again I kind of get a glimpse into that side of things, but I don't get to see very much of it. Chris, the owner of Ronin Katana, I think has talked and taken some photos of when he's gone on trips over there, and there's it sounds like a whole world of high-end smiths that are capable of making some really fine art pieces that we just don't get to see. Jeremy, I mostly care about performance. A Hanwei Raptor or a bamboo mat will do anything I will need it to a sword to do. That's fair. Yeah, there are certainly days where I feel like I've had enough of them, and one that does it is all I need. But then the next day comes and I want more swords. If you had $500 to spend on any katana, what would you get? That's a terrible question to ask me, Rice, because I've had, like, now it's the equivalent of, like, I don't know if that's safe for YouTube. But like, I obviously have had a lot of swords, and so at this point I'm a weird freak in terms of the stuff that I would spend $500 on. I have to temper even when I ask manufacturers to send me samples and I get to pick what I want. I kind of have to dial it back a little bit to make it within what other people might even find mildly appealing, because I want to see weird stuff. I want to make a My Little Pony katana because I've done so many projects and seen so many things. I've bought all the colors and I've done a lot of the themes, albeit 90% of them have been Mitsudomes. And so at this point, $500, I would maybe throw that at Swords from Northshire and, I don't know, have them make some weird themed sword as a custom novelty project. But that's just because because I've got a wall of them sitting behind me that are different. Genuine advice: if you have $500 and you don't have a katana and you would like one and you would not like it to be some sort of, weird kind of, I've tried it all and I want something unique and special and different. I would say watch the used market. Your money goes further there, and a $500 can sometimes buy you a $1,000 sword on the used market. I don't know that it will right now because the market's crazy, but if you keep an eye out on the used market, you are likely to have your money go a little bit further, and that would be my most honest advice. Shy of that, if I had $500 to spend, I like to cut stuff, and I also like to do Iaido, and so I think, depending on which, I was preferring $500, the practical XL stuff from Hanwei, great to cut just about anything in the backyard and tatami, and it holds up well. But you sacrifice a little bit on the fit and finish. If I was going more for Iaido and maybe general purpose cutting and not specifically lawn mowing, then I would do a Huawei. If you can get one in stock, because Joe's been waiting for this for like a year, and ordering one that isn't in stock may not be advisable. All right. As far as I know, only a few people make woots since they rediscovered the recipe, but I don't know. I don't know a lot about woots or the manufacture of it or the lostness of the recipe or rediscovery. Yeah, I'm not. It's very easy for me to perpetuate misinformation on it, so I kind of steer clear of the topic. But I don't know people working in that kind or like steel. Could I help you identify one of your katanas? It's got the same size style as handmade, but it's not folded. You can certainly send me a message on like Facebook or something like that with a picture, and if I recognize the model, I will try to help you. Handmade Swords has like a whole bunch of them that I'm not familiar with though, so it's entirely possible I won't know it, but you can certainly toss a picture my way, and if I know what it is, I'll be happy to tell you. I'm new to the channel and the hobby. Is it Letitia? I'm not sure how to say your name. Leticia? Hopefully I'm saying it correctly. New to the channel. Why do you never touch on John Lee swords? I got a practical one and found the quality pretty good. Any particular reason? I don't know John Lee. It's not a brand that I'm familiar with, so that's no particular reason. I don't have any feeling one way or another because I don't recognize the name. I remember Simon Lee from a while ago, and it seemed to be similar shapes and sizes and fittings of other swords with better polishes and some cleaner lines, but I don't know John Lee swords. It's not ringing a bell. So yeah, that's it. I don't have any, and it's not a topic I'm avoiding, just not one I was aware existed. Stephanie, high-end Chinese smiths end up making high-end Chinese swords for their market. That's fair. I've seen some Japanese style ones as well, but yes, it does seem like they have an internal market. I don't understand it particularly well, but that's okay. It would just be neat to see. That's it. I mean, if they're creating all this awesome artwork in sharp, pointy steel objects, I want to see it. That's it. I want to appreciate it. If there's really talented, savant, awesome smiths making stuff, even if it's not katanas or the type of sword that I generally see, it's a bummer that kind of stuff is not as available, because it would be cool to see. I know I'm probably not the only one in the channel here that enjoys sword porn, and so the more of it that's out there, the better. But yeah, that's all. I don't get any familiarity with those smiths, and I don't learn about their craft or what they're into or what makes them different, or I can't pick their work out if I spotted it, or what would kind of where their little nuances and signatures are, because it seems all closed off and I don't have access to it. Well, it's not, I don't know if I don't have access. Maybe it's just a language barrier and it's on the internet. I just can't, it's behind a website that I wouldn't know to look at or something like that. But if somebody knows more about where I could see pretty pictures, I would be keen on taking a look. A center of the Little Pony idea has you thinking about a Night Fury version. What was the one that got recommended to me? Derpy. It's the one with the bubbles. I'm not. My daughter really enjoys My Little Pony. I'm less familiar with the show, but I sure did buy a lot of My Little Pony toys, so I recognize some of them. And I remember going to Target and looking for specific ones, and so I got some familiarity with some of the characters in My Little Pony, but I don't remember Night Fury, and I don't remember Derpy, but I do remember Rainbow Dash because my daughter had lots of Rainbow Dash stuff. It seems like there's a few color schemes that could work. It's funny that the My Little Pony katana has gotten a lot more questions than I thought it would initially get. I will admit I initially expected people to be like, that is stupid, and you might as well buy a boat if you're going to burn money that way. But it's generated more interest than I thought, and there's been genuinely kind folks that are interested in My Little Pony that have reached out to me and provided some suggestions and ideas. And there's a whole adult fan base and community behind My Little Pony that I was not aware of, and it's awesome. There are people that seem genuinely excited about the prospect of having a My Little Pony katana exist in some capacity, and that's cool. Initially, I feel a little bit bad now though, because initially the My Little Pony idea was like this rude gesture between me and the Mystery Man in Black, where it was like the sword which dare not be made, right? Like if Matt, if you make it too purple, it's going to turn into a My Little Pony katana. If you put too many sparkles on it, if it's got too many ribbons, there's so many times that the joke was made that it turns into a My Little Pony katana if you do that like it got ingrained, and just as like I don't know, like maybe it's a fuck you to my former self or something. But I was like, what? Let's do a My Little Pony katana. Like, why not? Like, it's time, right? But now I kind of feel bad because there's like a whole. I didn't mean it to be insulting, genuinely. But now I feel like I may have inadvertently done that. There's a whole community of folks that don't find My Little Pony to be as funny or to be avoided as I initially thought. And it's cool how many folks have reached out and offered, genuine, honest, kind advice about some ideas to make a My Little Pony katana. And I haven't had, with the nuanced, the rambly ideas that I put out, sometimes I haven't had as many people reach out to me with as much passion about any other sword that I've made as I have with the My Little Pony katana. So yeah, it's unexpected, but now I feel like I kind of have it ups the game a little bit. Now it's not just some joke. I gotta make like a good My Little Pony katana if I want to do it. Anyway, so yeah, if you are in the My Little Pony, it's coming, and I will be sure to include people in the journey. First step one is I gotta find a sword that I won't lose my shirt on that I also like. Because I figure if I make like a big horse chopping blade, some big honking thing, it's probably not gonna go overly well for me. All right, where was I? And it's getting a little long in the stream here, so I'm probably gonna wrap things up pretty soon. Just a heads up. I'll make it through the questions here. If you have any more, you can throw them down there. I'll try to get through them, but I'll probably be stopping in the not too distant future. Wild. I've handled a long Tai Chi sword that isn't sharpened and cuts like a beast. Long hand. Okay, to the 53-inch. Welcome, Guns N' Rose. Thanks for joining the membershipy thing, which admittedly is a funny. I put it up there, and I'm surprised that as many people are willing to join for the awesome ability to spam Mitsudome emojis. But thank you for joining. All right. John Lee is a seller of Chinese replica katana in the Europe market. Yeah, I wasn't. Thanks for the heads up, Stephanie. Wasn't aware. Oh, geez, Abu Talib. I'm massacring your name. I apologize. Just wanted to thank you for your advice and opinion. Picked up my first katana based on your knowledge. Glad I could help. I'm genuinely. I'm glad whatever my rambles were aided you in some way, and hopefully you enjoy your katana slashy stabby stab in a safe and and fun way. Ace Night Fury is the dragon from How to Train Your Dragon. Oh, it wasn't My Little Pony related at all. See, and I remember How to Train Your Dragon. Black with fluorescent blue spine thing, and the female dragon is white. Yeah. There's some cool ways to do that. I did see somebody that did that's done black and like kind of like wood carved in lightning kind of stuff, and I've also seen stenciled fire, like motorcycle, like what you would see on a hot rod kind of thing, like the fire stenciling and stuff done in blue pearl. So some of that can be pretty cool. I think there's probably a tasteful way to do it. You can maybe carve in some of the dragon scales and leave those in like the bright neon blue, and then the rest black. That would maybe keep it from being too in your face, but have a little pizzazz. That'd be a lot of work though. Lots of stenciling, or lots of hand painting anyway. Leticia, hopefully, again, I'm saying your name right. Thanks. Do you sharpen your swords yourself? So maybe a tutorial at some point. I've been asked to do that. I just feel bad about it because I sharpen them in a shitty way. I've talked on the stream earlier about sharpening, and I don't do it particularly well. So I'm somewhat loath to perpetuate my bad novelty way of doing it, but I can. I've mentioned it a few times, and maybe it would be helpful. So at some point, yes, I can make a tutorial on how I sharpen swords. With the express caveat that you should probably find a better way. It's Michael, the My Little Pony. I think something daintier. A horse chopping blade would probably be not quite as not great. All right. For the pony and pink powered pink mecha mica flakes. It had a nice sheen without being too glittery. Maybe set mother of pearl somehow. I need to be really cautious with the pony thing, because the colors need to kind of match the tone of the character. Otherwise, it loses, I think, some of the zazz. So the idea would be to like color match some of the colors in one of the main characters from probably the 4th season. I'm learning more as I go, but the 4th season of My Little Pony, and there's 6 main characters, I think, and I do one of those. I'm leaning towards Rainbow Dash. Might go Twilight Sparkle. Getting really into My Little Pony now, but those are the ones. The rainbow one is really in your face, and the Twilight Sparkle one, there'd be a conceivable way that somebody that knows nothing about My Little Pony would also think it's a cool looking sword and be happy to own it. The rainbow one, just because it seems so in your face, is the one that I'm leaning towards. But if I do that, it's got to be the right colors on all the red and the blue. All of it kind of has to match the character, or it's just going to look like a weird rainbow colored katana rather than a My Little Pony katana, which is the specific intent. All right. Joe, listening live in the background, Matt, and working on testing the green screen video right now. Well, good stuff. You're gonna be all. Joe's got some high production value, incidentally. So for the folks out there that are unaware, Joe Steel Forged in Fire, Sword and Knife. He's got his own YouTube channel, and you should check it out. He talks about swords, and he's certainly a better at the whole camera work and the live thingy thing than I am. He actually makes plans and has conversations rather than just randomly reading stuff and rambling in a camera. Night Fear Katana. Yeah, well, if you make the project, let's check it out. Well, anyway, I'm actually caught up with chat, and so I'm gonna read this last one from Wusai, and then I'm probably gonna sign off for the evening. Haven't watched your videos in sometimes due to military deployment, but what really did first get you into collecting blades? Naturally, there's a lot. So I've liked swords for as long as I can remember, and I think I've told this story before, but like I was into ninja movies when I was a kid, and I didn't have a filter on like what I could watch from a pretty young age. So like the swords and sorcery movies of the 80s, which were around when I was a kid, I got to watch pretty early. It certainly fueled my fascination for swords, but I had toy swords when I was a kid. I got my first like steel sword, albeit not a particularly functional sword, when I was like 5 years old. My uncle gave me a sword, which oddly my parents didn't seem to mind. Because if somebody gave my 5-year-old a sword, I'd probably be like, like now, I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff that happened in the way back when that doesn't happen anymore. But I've been fascinated with them since I was a kid, and I had a modest collection of mostly trash up into my late 20s, early 30s, and I, at that point, I kind of said like, oh, I'm a grown ass man, and I want to have a nice sword, and I went out and I spent about $1,000 on one, and I hated it, and yeah, so then that bad experience is really what spiraled into what you see behind me, where I didn't have one that I liked, so I started buying a lot of used stuff, and I figured if I could lose less than $20 on the experience of buying a used one and selling it to somebody else if I didn't like it, would get me exposure to what I really wanted, and I just didn't stop doing that. I've slowed down since, but that's where the real turn in the amount of stuff that I have had has come from. And I had a conversation with Joe, Steel Forged in Fire, the other day, and I was screen sharing something and got to see my photo library. And there's, I don't know, I think it's under 2,000 swords, probably. I don't know. I've lost track of how many swords I've owned, but it's over 1,000. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's not 2,000. So somewhere in between there is the number of swords that I've had, and a lot of that came from buying and selling and trading, and buying things in bulk and buying out collections, and I'm including in that the things that I've gotten from other people, not to review, but like that I've sold on consignment or something like that, if for lack of a better term. So yeah, that's kind of what I've gotten to have experience with swinging around and playing with, and that happened from getting a sword I didn't like, and then wanting to find one that I did. And then along the way, I started a YouTube channel and rambled about it, and other stuff happened too. But I really like swords since I was from as far back as I can remember. And so it's kind of cool now that like this thing that I was infatuated with when I was like a 5-year-old kid is something that I'm doing, as a 40-year-old man. So that is I don't know. It's like meant to be, I guess. But anyway, that's what I can't rightly say what got me into it exactly. There were a lot of influences that started my fascination and getting into collecting. I was into collecting, but like what spiraled me out of control was having a shitty sword I didn't like, and then trying my hand at the used market, and then it just kind of kept going. And then that was it. That was anyway, general story. I hope that answers your question. I like swords a lot. I think a lot of people get into swords for very different reasons, though. Sometimes it's movies, sometimes it's a martial art that drives a fascination with the sword, and they kind of come to it later. I got fascinated with the sword and then the martial art, which I don't think is as common. It's interesting how different people find themselves in the hobby. I said I was going to stop it naturally. I have to read a couple more since there, but I'm going to stop really soon. So don't throw out too many more questions. What would you say is the best place to buy a katana for long-term use and have minimal wear and tear? A general good place to look is Cult of Athena. There's certainly other places out there, but for mass production stuff, they have a pretty good selection and good prices. So I'd say they're a good spot to look. And if you want something custom, then I would go. Well, there's a lot of places I would go, but I'd figure out a lot more detailed about what you want. If a custom sword of $5,000 to $10,000 is, if that demonstrates a lot of money to you, then I would learn more about it and maybe buy some production stuff to figure out what you like before forking that amount over. But there's lots of really talented smiths out there that can make them for you. Twilight Flash is a nice color scheme. 5. I had my first when I was 12. I actually snapped it. Yeah, five. I had. It was a Toledo made. I gave it to my brother some time ago. I don't. I had all of the stuff that wasn't functional and really usable, and I gave it all to my younger brother, and I'm not sure what he did with it, but I kind of sometimes I regret selling or giving away my first sword. But I did. I took all the stuff that wasn't functional and even worse selling or vaguely sentimental, and I gave it away, which was the majority of my initial collection. That's a pretty great introduction. I'm bad experiences to get into the depth of reason. Yeah. I suppose the Hanwei praying mantis in some way is somewhat responsible for my ramblings on YouTube now. That sword, I want to, if I had as like a 30-year-old guy that has been working a job and is out of debt and wants to buy a fancy sword and has got $1,000 to spend. If I had just gotten a sword I really liked, I don't know that I would have used it and practiced with it and probably moved on with my life. I probably would have had still a fascination with swords, but I don't know if I would have gone the direction it did. So yeah, it was a bad sword can sometimes make something good, I guess. What are your thoughts on Redragon Army? I don't know what that is. I think I've heard of it, but I don't like it. Nothing's coming to mind, so I don't have much to say about it because I don't recall having any products from Redragon Army. Wild. Once you find your favorite sword, it. Yes, that's a fair description. What do you think of KC-120 high carbon steel? Is it good? I don't think so, personally. I think it looks nice, but the swords that I've had from it tend to be softer. So if I think of the Tori Elite, that's a KC-120 blade, and I find it to be, when I compare steels, I'm not a metallurgist, so I don't know. I don't know if it's better or in what way it's superior. But I think of the Hanwei XL or Elite geometry blades, they tend to be very similar to one another. So the practical Elite and the Musashi Elite and the Tori Elite tend to have different fittings, but the blade in profile looks very, very similar to me. And the practical and the Musashi, respectively made out of Hanwei's, I can't remember what the practical stuff is made out of, like a 1060 equivalent kind of thing. And then the Musashi is a T10, and the Tori Elite is the KC-120. And I've had a few Tori Elites now, and I bought a few of them used, and I see them a lot bent, and I've found them also to be easier to bend. I've had 2 or 3 of them that have taken sets and bends a little easier than the equivalent Musashi or practical have. I don't think that they hold an edge in order of magnitude better. And so, while I like the theme of the Tori more than the other two, I don't think the steel is superior. I've also seen it done on like the Honda. The Tori Elite though is the only one that I've really seen bend, made out of the KC-120. But it's also the sword from Hanwei that, as I compare that to, I've seen a lot of XL or practical elites, and I've seen a lot of Musashis, and I've seen a lot of Tories because they're pretty common in the practice of Toyama Ryu, and because they're kind of purpose-built tatami cutters, and because they are very similar blades, it's a little easier to compare them because they have very similar shapes and thicknesses and all that kind of stuff. And so the ones I see that seem to take the most damage are the Tori Elites. And so I don't, assuming that that's representative of KC-120 across what Hanwei produces, I don't think it's superior. It's cooler looking, but I don't think it offers superior performance at all. It seems a little softer and easier to bend, frankly. All right. I lost where I was and I kept going. But yes, there's more stuff coming in. But I'm gonna stop here. I said I was gonna stop a bit ago, and I didn't. I kind of kept going, but I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna wrap it up here. So if you've got some questions and I didn't answer, I'm sorry. I went on for as I planned to stop at 9, but I said I would probably ramble on for like almost an hour longer than that, which is pretty much what happened. But I will stop here. Thank you for the conversation and questions. Hopefully the Ramble stream has been helpful. I would like to not do as many lives and actually make videos, but it's been cold. But I will make more. In the absence of making a video, a live seems to be a good one. So anyway, thank you for the questions and keeping me going. I appreciate it. If I don't have a video out next week, then I'll try to find some random sporadic time to show up on the internet and ramble. And that's all I got. I hope it was entertaining. Joe, thank you for the praise as always, the kind words. Thank you everyone for the questions, and cheers. Thanks for watching.